My 13-year-old niece chuckled. Mom says if you vanished tomorrow, nobody would care. As she tore the wrapping off the $850 phone I'd gotten her. The room, filled with 30 relatives, erupted in laughter, everyone except me. I gave a nod, and with a couple of swipes I canceled every payment, credit, bill, and subscription. Done. That night I left, cut all ties, and disappeared, leaving only a black backpack behind. Inside, they'd find, Mom says if you vanished tomorrow, nobody would care. My niece snickered, peeling the plastic from the $850 phone I'd bought her. Her fingers were gentle, but her words cut deep. The living room buzzed with the voices of my family, a crowd of 30, each one too loud, too thoughtless. A birthday cake sat on the kitchen table, its candles unlit, though a fire already burned in my chest. My sister Lindsay didn't glance up. Lounging on the sofa, scrolling her phone, she smirked, a small, triumphant grin like she'd just won a bet. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring a pot, acting like she hadn't heard, but I caught the slight lift of her shoulders, a quiet endorsement. Dad, he didn't bother hiding it. He laughed, raised his beer, and mumbled, "Well, she's got a point." Laughter spread through the room. My cousins grinned, and even Uncle Gary, who barely knew me beyond holiday dinners, chuckled into his glass. I stood there frozen like an idiot, like the idiot I'd always been, the one who paid, the one who fixed, the one who was never enough. "Thanks for the phone, Uncle," my niece chirped, already nestled against her mom, her eyes glued to the glowing screen. I watched her, my pulse pounding, my face burning, and the room suddenly felt tighter. Suffocating, but I stayed silent. I just nodded because that's what I always did. Nodded, smiled, played along, always pretending. Lindsay finally looked up, her eyes locking with mine, and in that moment I saw it, a glint of amusement, of victory. Like she'd been waiting for this. For me to stand there, mute, humiliated. "All right, everyone, time to cut the cake." Mom's voice rang out, bright and breezy, brushing away the tension. But its aftertaste lingered, sharp and bitter. I drifted to the kitchen, leaning against the counter as they gathered around the table. Candles were lit, wishes were made, and I just stood there, hands balled into fists. My jaw tightened, and beneath the pain, something colder took root. I felt my phone in my pocket, 2 quick swipes. And every bill, every subscription, every credit line I'd set up for them, for Lindsay, for Mom, for Dad, gone. My fingers moved without pause, like instinct, a choice I didn't even realize I'd made until it was done. Vanished. Just like that. The voices faded into a distant drone. The room tilted, a sea of familiar faces, now strangers. They laughed, they cheered, they celebrated, and I was invisible. A ghost with a credit card, but no more. I slipped out without a word. No one noticed. Of course they didn't. My niece was right about one thing. I didn't go home. I went to my apartment, packed a few necessities into a small bag, and then turned back. The black backpack was old, tucked away in the corner of my closet. But tonight it had a purpose. I filled it not with my things, not with anything they'd expect. Then I returned. The house was still a chaotic mess. No one saw me slip in, walk down the hall, and leave the backpack by the stairs. And then I was gone, truly gone. By the time they realized, I'd be a shadow. But inside that backpack, let them find it. Let them try to make sense of it. The quiet didn't last. I expected anger, panic, but what came was a storm. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my apartment door. Not a call, not a gentle knock, just fists slamming against wood. "Open the door. You think you can just do this?" Dad's voice, loud, furious. I stayed still, watching the door rattle like it might break. "I know you're in there. You think you're clever. You think you're above us." His voice cracked, not just with anger, but with something else, fear. I didn't respond. I wasn't playing their game. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his heavy steps fade, a muttered curse, and the slam of his car door, but it wasn't over, not even close. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up. A text from Mom, one line. "How could you do this to your own family?" I didn't reply. An hour later, Lindsay called. I watched her name flash on the screen and let it ring. Then again, and again. 6 calls in a row. Finally, a text. "You think you're so smart? You think we can't survive without you? Fine, see how long you last without us." I read it and smirked. Was that meant to scare me or tempt me? But the real chaos came that evening. I was stepping out of the shower when I heard a key in the lock. I froze. No one should have a key to my place. No one except the door flew open. Dad stormed in, face red, sweat dripping from his brow, Mom right behind him, her eyes wide and frantic. "You think you can just shut me out?" Dad roared. "Get out," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Get out. Get out," he bellowed. "This is what you've become, ditching your own family? We raised you." Mom's voice was shrill, almost unhinged. "You used me," I corrected, leaning against the kitchen counter, still toweling my hair. There's a difference. Dad stepped closer, his fist clenched. You ungrateful little snake. Try it. The words slipped out calm, solid, a dare. His hand shook, but it didn't move. We both knew the truth. He wasn't a fighter, never had been. He was a bully who hid behind words, who shouted to mask his own fear. What did you do? Mom's voice broke. The cards don't work. Lindsay can't pay her bills. The mortgage, it's all gone. That's right, I nodded. Everything I paid for, everything I handled, it's done. Dad laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Oh, you think you're so powerful, you think we need you? Seems like you do, I shrugged. Since you broke into my apartment to beg. Beg, he snarled. You think we're begging? Enough, I snapped, my voice cutting through his rant. Enough, I'm done. Mom stepped forward, hands outstretched. Please, this is your family. We're all you have. All you have, I corrected. I'm done being your fallback, your bank, your punching bag. Dad's face twisted. You little rat, I raised a finger. Get out, now. You can't do this, Mom whispered, tears welling. This is cruel. Cruel, I laughed. Cruel is calling your son worthless while spending his money. Cruel is using me like a tool and laughing behind my back. Dad stepped forward again, but I didn't flinch. This time he stopped. His shoulders sagged. You'll regret this, he muttered. You'll come crawling back. I won't, I said, my voice like iron. They left, slamming the door, but as their footsteps faded, I knew this wasn't the end. The next day they tried another approach. Lindsay showed up at my office. I saw her through the glass, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. My boss looked puzzled, then uneasy as she started waving at me. I stayed at my desk. Sir, there's a woman here. She's no one. I didn't even look up, but she didn't leave. I watched her argue with the receptionist, her voice rising, hands trembling. Then security stepped in, escorting her out. I knew she'd be back. That night, another knock, my landlord. There's a bit of a situation. He shifted uncomfortably. Your family's downstairs causing a scene. Tell them to leave or I'll call the police. He blinked. But it's your family. No, I corrected. Not anymore. I watched from the window as they stood there, shouting, gesturing wildly until security led them away. But I knew them. I knew their stubbornness. And I knew that somewhere in that house I left behind there was a black backpack waiting for them to open, to understand just how far I was willing to go. The quiet didn't last. I knew them too well. Silence was just the calm before the tempest. For days I ignored their calls, their texts, their desperate voicemails. I even skipped work, savoring the stillness while the world faded. But I wasn't foolish. I knew they wouldn't quit. It started with Lindsay's outbursts. Messages laced with venom, blaming me for everything. Mom's tearful voicemails came next, her voice cracking as she pleaded for me to be the bigger person to save the family. Then Dad. At first it was fury, threats, insults, the usual noise, but then his tone shifted. Calm, calculated, an offer. Son, let's settle this like men, no drama, just you and me. There's a game this weekend, our team's playing, come. Let's sort it out. A trap. I felt it in my gut, but I agreed. I wanted this, so I went. But when I saw the empty seats around him and the black backpack clutched in his hands, I knew I was right. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. But I wasn't the same fool who'd stood in that living room, nodding and smiling. Not anymore. The stadium roared like a wild beast. Cheers, shouts, the stomping of feet on metal bleachers. It was chaos. The perfect place for secrets to vanish. Dad was waiting in Section 12, row F, the seats around him empty despite the packed game. He spotted me instantly, waving with one hand, the other gripping the black backpack. My backpack. I walked down the steps, each step deliberate, my eyes fixed on him. He looked eager. A twisted grin spread across his face, like he thought he'd already won. Didn't think you'd show, he shouted over the noise, patting the seat beside him. Ready to talk like men, huh? Talk. I settled into the seat, my gaze locked on the backpack in his lap. Is that what this is? Oh, it's more than that. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a hiss. You thought you were clever, huh? Running off, cutting us off. But you left a little gift behind. His fingers tapped the backpack. We found this, and guess what, genius, we know. Know what? I asked, my voice steady as the cold breeze sweeping the field. Your secrets, your lies, you think you're clean. That you're better than us? His voice sharpened. You've been hiding things I should have known all those times you played the hero, the savior. I almost laughed. Open it then, let's see what you think you know. His eyes flickered with something, fear, anger. Don't play games, I don't need to open it. I know you've been stealing from us, scheming, pretending to be the good son while hiding your little hoard. Hoard? I leaned back, feeling the cold metal seat against my spine. The only hoard in there is the truth. The crowd roared as the home team scored, but here in our little bubble of conflict, there was only silence, tension, and his trembling hands on the backpack. You're bluffing, he muttered. You're trying to make me doubt, but it's over. We're exposing what kind of person you are, how you abandoned your family. Go ahead, I gestured to the field. Tell them all, tell them how I covered Lindsay's rent for 2 years. How I bilaid you out when you gambled away half your savings. How I bought that phone for your precious granddaughter right before she said I was nothing. His face darkened. Shut up. Number, let's be clear, Dad. That bag's full of proof of everything I did for you and everything you took. And you think you've got leverage? His grip tightened on the backpack, knuckles white. Don't talk to me like that. Like what? I leaned forward, my voice calm, my eyes blazing. Like the disposable tool you always treated me as. Like the walking bank account, the errand boy. Shut up, he shouted, standing, drawing looks from the rows behind. Sit down. My voice was ice, and for a moment I saw it, fear in his eyes. He hated me, but more than that, he feared losing control. Or what? He forced a laugh, thin, desperate. What are you gonna do? Hit your own father? You think anyone here will side with you? You think they'd side with you? I gestured to the crowd, the sea of strangers who didn't care about his bluster. You're just an angry old man with a bag full of debts. And they don't know me, but they don't need to. His face twisted, his voice a snarl. You selfish punk. Selfish, I smiled. I was your lifeline, and now you're sinking without me. He swung. I saw it coming, his thick, trembling hand aiming for my face, but I didn't move. I didn't flinch. He wanted a reaction, a scene proof I was the villain in his story, but I just stared, calm, unyielding. And his fist stopped, inches from my face, shaking. I should have left you on the streets, he whispered, his voice trembling. You were always a leech. Funny, I whispered back, leaning so close I could smell the stale beer on his breath. That's exactly what I thought of you. Something in him shattered. His hand dropped, his shoulders sank. The crowd's cheers grew deafening, the perfect cover for the collapse of whatever pride he had left. I reached out, snatched the backpack, and pulled it from his grasp. He didn't resist. Want to know what's in here? I asked, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Everything I did for you, every dollar, every sacrifice. People were staring now, some whispering, some pointing. A few had their phones out. You want the truth? I unzipped the backpack, pulling out a thick stack of documents. Here it is, proof of how I carried you, how I paid your bills, how I saved your house from foreclosure twice. His face paled. And you want to talk about betrayal? I stood, holding the papers high. You betrayed me the day you turned me into your personal bank, the day you laughed when they said I was nothing. Stop, he whispered, his voice small, his body sinking into the seat. No, you wanted a scene? You got one. I tossed the papers at his feet, and they scattered, fluttering down the steps like fallen leaves. I turned, walking up the steps, past the staring faces, past the whispers. You can't just leave, he shouted, his voice breaking. But I didn't stop, I didn't look back. For the first time, his voice was nothing. They didn't stop trying, not at first. The day after the stadium, after Dad's pride crumbled on those cold metal seats, my phone became a battlefield. Call after call. Messages poured in. Accusations, pleas, threats. A cycle of desperation in their familiar voices. I ignored it all. Dad was the first to crack. His calls went from rage to begging within hours. We can work this out, he lied. I'll let it all go. Let's be a family. But I didn't answer. Then Mom, her texts heavy with guilt. You're tearing us apart. We didn't mean it. Family's all we have. I didn't even read them all. Lindsay came next. Her messages were pure poison. You're a coward, a selfish, useless coward. You've ruined everything. Then please just talk to me. I didn't mean it. I was scared. Don't do this. But I did. Silence. That was my response. That was my vengeance. They didn't get it at first. They thought I was bluffing, playing some cruel game. But as days turned to weeks, as the bills they ignored piled up, as their friends stopped picking sides, they finally understood. They couldn't reach me. The landlord at their house called, stumbling over his words, saying they hadn't paid rent. I told him it wasn't my problem. Mom sent a photo of the family sitting in the dark, a lone candle flickering on the table. We have nothing left. I deleted it without a second thought. One evening, walking back from the store, I saw him, Dad, pacing outside my building like a madman. His face was pale, hands trembling. That familiar fire in his eyes was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. He spotted me, his eyes sparking with warped desperation. He hurried toward me. Listen, you can't do this. You're my son. No, I didn't pause. I was your bank account. He blocked my path, his voice breaking. We raised you, we gave you everything. You drained me. I stared straight into his eyes, and now you're left with nothing. I tried to move past, but his hand darted out, clutching my arm. You don't get to walk away like this. His voice turned into a growl, the old fury rising. You think you're above us, you think you can just leave? I know I can. I yanked my arm free. And I have. He swung at me, slow. Feeble, I didn't even blink. His fist grazed my shoulder, more a clumsy push than a strike. He staggered, catching himself against the building's wall, panting. Pathetic. The word slipped out like a whisper. His face contorted, that familiar anger igniting. You'll come crawling back. You always do. You're nothing without us. I laughed, loud, cutting. It rang through the empty street. I was nothing with you, I said, turning away. I walked off. I didn't glance back. That night I tossed my phone into the bottom drawer of my desk and left it there. The texts, the missed calls, they stacked up, but they couldn't reach me. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten, shaky scrawl, Mom. Please, your father's falling ill. Lindsay's unraveling. We're breaking apart. You're the only one who can mend this. Please come back. I crushed it without finishing. They were falling apart. Good, because for the first time I didn't relocate, I didn't change my number, I didn't hide, I stayed right where I was, but I left their world behind. And their world collapsed without me. Lindsay's friends stopped responding to her calls. Mom's distant cousins, who once sent polite holiday cards, turned their backs. Dad, he lost his temper at work one too many times and got sacked. But I didn't care, I didn't watch. I lived. I cooked for myself, slept soundly, took long walks without dreading the buzz of messages demanding my time, my money, my existence. They were just echoes now, phantoms I'd left in a crumbling house. And I was free. Months passed and silence became a companion. I woke when I chose, ate without guilt, spent weekends wandering the city I'd once overlooked, savoring freedom in every quiet moment. Sometimes I'd brace for the familiar hum of desperate texts, the crushing guilt, the frantic voice begging me to fix their mess. But it never came. I had done the unthinkable. I buried them, not in the earth, but in my life. One crisp autumn morning, I strolled down Main Street, past the cafe where I'd bought overpriced cakes for Lindsay's birthday, the shop where I'd dropped a fortune on gifts, the restaurant where I'd covered family dinners, always so generous, until I wasn't. Shadows, just shadows. On the corner, a street musician strummed a slow, soulful tune. His voice was gritty, fingers gliding over the strings, a sound that didn't aim for perfection, only truth. I paused, letting the music envelop me. It wasn't about love, it wasn't about loss, it was about release. The world moved around me, vibrant and alive. I stood still, soaking it in. When the song ended, I dropped a 20 into the open guitar case. The musician nodded and I smiled. Not because I had to, not because someone expected it, but because I wanted to, and that was the difference. I didn't need them, I never had. I walked on, each step lighter, each breath freer. As the sun sank below the rooftops, casting the sky in gold and scarlet, I felt it. A quiet conviction. I was free.